Welcome to the channel. Tonight I'm going to be going over Yellowstone episode 4 and 5. I fell behind a little bit with Thanksgiving and having kind of a busy work week leading up to Thanksgiving. And then Hawkeye came out and I started watching that show and cutting videos for that as well and reviewing it. But fortunately, well, unfortunately for the show, but fortunately for me, episode 4 and 5 of Yellowstone have really been kind of boring. It's kind of moving slow. So let's just dive right in. I'm going to get into my notes here. So we're on episode 4. Opens up with, Jimmy. He's on the road with Travis heading down to the 4-6's ranch. And it's funny because they start off at they're at the first like rodeo show that Travis is competing and his team is competing in, and Travis, I like Travis. I thought the way he was treating Jimmy, he was being a dick, but like I said before, he's kind of a big wig, and he's a big name in the rodeo game. So he's cocky, kind of, you know, he's funny. I like him. I still like him. And the way he talks to Jimmy, it just kind of cracks me up. Jimmy just takes it on the chin. So, but anyways, Travis is, he's going to ride, and we get right into another horse riding montage. Again, I appreciate the sport, but they're reusing this. It's like every episode, and it's been the same thing. It's not like it's different things. It's them just doing the same stuff with their horses. But they're actually in a competition, and Jimmy's watching. And at the end of the show, Jimmy's picking up the checks, and he's having them mailed off to the Yellowstone, because obviously Travis and his team won a bunch of money, and he's trying to write a letter to Mia, and he can't get it together. He can't put what he wants down on paper. So then we see John in the barn again with Carter. I understand that they're trying to set this sort of rhythm with them meeting in the barn every morning, but this show has just been it's been a lot of the same old kind of sludging through the same shit. So, but Casey meets him at the barn, and they head off to. He says, "Let's go meet at the Rock," and I guess obviously it's legitimately it's a rock. It's this big rock that they sit on and talk, I guess, and they talk about. John's talking to Casey about the history of the ranch, and it's kind of a cool scene. We learn a couple things about John, and then he gives Casey the paperwork to the prisoner. So this is what I mean. This file has been handed around, and it's got the photo of the prisoner who supposedly orchestrated the hit on the Dutton family. So he lets him know, and he has a plan to test Jamie's loyalty by having him set up the meeting with the prisoner, or the interrogation, or not an interrogation, it is a meeting with the prisoner. His name is Terrell. I think his name is Terrell. I thought I wrote that down. But he basically, if Jamie, flinches at setting up the meeting, then that'll be their way of knowing that he was involved. So they also talk about Casey and his family, Monica and Tate. They went through a pretty tragic situation where she was attacked, and then Tate actually killed the man who was attacking his mother. So Tate's struggling, rightfully so. John's giving him. He's telling him he needs to figure this out, and Casey's he thinks he knows what he wants to do, but he's just not sure. So then we see cut to Jamie and Garrett, his biological father, on Jamie's ranch. They have a little scene where Jamie's thanking him for pushing him into buying the ranch, I guess, and it's kind of a whatever scene. So then we have Beth meets up with Jackie and Ellis, and Beth's got to do her annoying shit as usual. It starts off just going right into insults and just vulgar sexual stuff, and basically just wants to get underneath Ellis's skin. And Ellis gets up and walks out, and it's It's more annoying shit from her. It's whenever she does this, it just sort of it like stalls out the scene because it's just her being a bitch, and it's just stupid. So then Jackie offers her a job with Market Equities. That's her company, and they had their conversation was a little bit better, than normal. Jackie, it's just funny. She says "fuck" just too much. It just doesn't fit her character. I mean, it doesn't fit her appearance. I think it's more, than her character. But she gives her a little talking to in terms of, the big dog's off the porch, and she's crushed little bitches like her before, is what she says, something like that. Um, but Beth stipulates that she'll take the job only if um, Jackie will give Beth their controlling stake of Schwarzenmeyer, which is the job that she was fired from, Beth's previous job. So then we see Jamie meets with Ruth, and I think we've seen her before, but it's basically about a lawsuit regarding the airport and how the law firm wants to basically stop the building of the airport. And I thought it was a decent scene because we actually see Jamie be competent. Like, he actually speaks like a lawyer. And, even if I don't agree with what his position is, but because, they're saying, you're going to basically destroy a bunch of land, you're going to disturb the nature and animals and all this other stuff and the environmental perspective, which I understand. But he at least talks like a lawyer. He at least he basically tells him to fuck off. But um, then we see so Casey comes in right as they're leaving. Casey comes in, and they talk about something that I thought was important for the show, which was Casey confronts Jamie. Well, it doesn't really confront him. He just asks him about why he wasn't around after everything happened at the beginning of the season with the shooting and John getting shot and Beth getting blown up. And I thought it was a really good moment so that we can see Jamie explain why. And his reason was sound, that he was running protection for the Dutton family, keeping them out of a courtroom, keeping them out of jail. And he speaks to Casey in a way like he's letting him know that, hey, listen, I had your back this whole time. He provided police protection for John the entire time he was recovering in the hospital. He he reiterates what Casey did and tells him, like, you did these things, all these men were killed, and I kept you all out of trouble. And he couldn't talk to them or communicate with them because it would I forgot what he called it. It basically was, legally he cannot speak to them and put himself in jeopardy and the family. And I thought that it was a good scene because when Beth approached him about it, it was just Beth being Beth, throwing shit at him, and him scampering away like a little kicked, like a beaten dog. Just, I don't know. Their interaction was so poor, but this I thought was good because Casey's talking to him. He wants to know, and Casey actually understands why. And then he lets him know about he gives him the folder with the prisoner Terrell. Again, I think it's his name, Terrell. And he does say, yes, I will absolutely do this. And, he doesn't flinch. He passes the test, which was good. And I thought it was a good scene because Casey and Jamie, they don't get a lot of screen time together. We don't see them interacting a lot. And so it's kind of nice to see them discuss things, because we don't really get to see it. And then, they tell each other, they call each other brother, and they say they love each other. So I don't know, thought it was a pretty decent scene. And then we cut to back on the ranch, and so there's this, I guess the cows have pink eye, and it's Lloyd, Walker, and the rest of the cowboys and cowgirls. And they're arguing about how to treat the cows. And Lloyd is just being stupid and stubborn because Walker is the one who comes up with the plan how to treat them. And Walker is correct. and Lloyd is just going opposite just because it's Walker. And it that whole this whole Lloyd Walker thing is dumb, and it just gets dumber. So then, uh, while they're heading back to the ranch to start doing the treatment on the cows, John and Rip show up on horses, and they just they just dig into Lloyd and just rip his ass because his decision was stupid, and basically they call him out. And then Casey, he tells John about Jamie, lets him know how everything. He shows up. I'm sorry. He comes into the scene and tells John what's going on and says, yeah, Jamie was cool. He's going to set up the meeting. So then cut to Jamie and Monica. I'm sorry, not Jamie and Monica. Casey and Monica. I typed Jamie. I don't know why I did that. So Casey and Monica have a discussion about leaving the ranch, and he's telling her, you know, it's time for them to leave, and she's super excited. Which is good. It's good for them to get out of there. And then, so then we cut to they're back at the bunkhouse, and Teeter, Teeter is funny. I really like her. She's just a funny. Her character is funny. She makes me laugh, and she's very pretty. And the way she talks, and I don't know. I think she's doing a great job as that character. And then she's making dinner for them, and Walker and Rip get into a fist fight, and Walker approaches him, tries to be cool, and then Lloyd he won't answer him, won't talk to him. He's being stupid. So then Walker basically says, you want to dance, old man, and then they get into a fight, and Lloyd, takes the first swing. And I don't know. I guess it's good that it finally came to a head, but the whole basis of this story is stupid. So Rip is in the barn talking to Carter, and this is what I mean when I say that this right now this show is just sort of sludging along. Rip has been lecturing Carter every scene between Rip and Carter since the incident at the store, which was fucking stupid, with Beth and Carter. It's just Rip telling him, like, giving him advice, but nothing's happening with it. There's nothing. And Carter just basically sits there and listens. There's no back and forth. There's no interaction whatsoever. So he's in the barn giving him some more talk, and he overhears the incident. He goes into the bunkhouse, and Rip doesn't play that shit. He has one rule on the ranch about fighting, and there is no fighting. And if you want to fight someone, you fight Rip. He'll fight you all day. So he beats the shit out of Lloyd. And I thought it was kind of weird because I know Lloyd, he wasn't there, so he doesn't know that Lloyd actually took the first swing on Walker, but it was just all pinned on Lloyd. So all he did was got in Walker's face. He didn't do anything to him. So I don't know. I think it would have made more sense if he had kicked the shit out of both of them. But regardless, let's see, where were we? So it's the end of the night. Beth and John meet on the porch to talk about the ranch, and John wants to open the ranch up to make more money, make it more profitable. And Beth says, okay, she'll deal with it. And she tells him about the job offer from Market Equities. Sorry. And the thing that I don't understand about Beth and John is Beth has openly said once John is out of the picture, meaning dead, she's going to sell the ranch off, and she's going to make a shit ton of money off this ranch. But her purpose right now is, while John is alive, her father's alive, she's going to fight until her last breath, keeping the ranch. And I don't know, it's weird that, because she said this openly. Now, I don't recall her saying this directly to John's face, but she has said this to Jamie. She has said this repeatedly to Jamie, and she said it to other people. And she's even told Jackie during the meeting that's what she's going to do. And I don't know. I don't understand why John trusts her so much, just because she says, oh, I'm going to fight while you're alive, and then as soon as you're dead, I'm selling this place. What's the point? So I don't know. I think it's a little forced that John and her relationship is so strong and tight based on trust, when she's just going to sell him out after he goes. Um, so then, so we cut back to Rip. He's lecturing Carter again, and it just doesn't work. Like the repetitiveness of this storyline between these two is just, it's really wearing thin. So then Jimmy, they cut back to Jimmy and Travis riding in the truck, heading down to the 4-6's ranch. And I thought it was a decent discussion between Travis and Jimmy because, you know, Travis and this scene, he actually gives him good advice, and it was sound advice in regards to him being a cowboy and why he rides and his relationship with horses. And I hope that that bears fruit later on, but the way the show is moving, it's so slow right now. But it was at least a good talk, and it seemed to have sunk into Jimmy a little bit, what he said. Then we cut to Beth and Rip. They're in bed, and they're having a little pillow talk, and she talks about Rip's birthday, and he says he doesn't know what it is, and she gets upset and says we're gonna, you know, she gives him a birthday. I don't remember what it was. It was a decent scene. You know, again, with when Beth's acting normal, it's always a good day. So then we cut to Jamie. Oh, so Jamie gets the list of visitors. I think it's visitors and cellmates in from the prisoner. His name's Terrell. The picture that has we've seen multiple times and nothing's happening with it yet. He's in his office and he gets the paperwork, and surprise, surprise, he sees his father's name, biological father Garrett. His name was on the list. So I kind of figured that's what was going on. It made sense. So, and then basically the next scene is Jimmy getting dropped off at the Six's big ass ranch, and that's that. So all in all, the episode was kind of slow. Nothing really moved, and the only big reveal was Garrett being on that list. But it was, I don't know, it wasn't really a surprise. So now we're going on to episode 5. So John's having dinner alone because Casey and Monica and Tate, they have left, and he's unpacking his bags in his bedroom, taking a shower and everything. And now he's back in the big room, and Beth's in his room. He doesn't know it. He has a big ass room. It's actually like there's like a living room attached to his master bedroom, and so she's on the couch, and they have a pretty good conversation. Again, you know, their relationship to me, it's not bad. It's just that Beth, the way she talks about the ranch when she's discussing the legacy of it, she doesn't really care. Like the legacy of the ranch is all John worries about. Like he wants to get the name out there. He wants to push the Yellowstone brand out into the world. And she is going to sell it or do whatever she's going to do with it as soon as he's dead or out of the picture. So I don't know. I think I wonder if that's ever going to bear fruit. I don't know. So now we're at Monica's dad's house. So Casey, Tate, and Monica, they are at Monica's dad's house for now. That's where they're living. And Tate is in the sweat lodge with her father, and Rainwater is actually in there too. And then, you know, Casey is talking to Monica about looking for a place. It's time for them to move out from their father's homes, which I thought was kind of cool. So the thing is, Rainwater talks to Monica about Tate, and she's asking him, how is he? How do you think he is? And I thought it was weird because when Casey and Monica talked about this, she was, I hate you. You know, those were her words. I hate you. She hated the place, the idea of living there, and I thought at the time, I was like, okay, I understand you're upset. Your son has had to kill a man. I understand. But then Rainwater talks to her and says the same thing that Casey said, which was he didn't do anything wrong. And he didn't. Those men were there to kill them. And he defended his mother and himself. So, you know, in the eyes of, you know, just and, you know, doing what's right and what's necessary, defending your home, defending your family, he is right. But Monica wasn't she wasn't hearing that from Casey. It was just, I hate you, you know, and it just, I don't know. I just thought it was, I thought it was interesting that now Rainwater says it and it's okay. You know, she accepts it and it's all right now that it wasn't Casey saying that. So, but he says the same thing, that he has done something that most men will never have to do and don't want to do. And he has the, he called it like a warrior or something. Basically, he's a warrior now, and that most people or society says that that's not okay. And now he has to learn to be okay with it. And again, good advice. It was Casey said something very similar to that, but when Rainwater says it, it's okay. So I don't know. Monica, I don't dislike Monica. She's kind of bland. You know, they really haven't done much with her character. Um, but just I thought that that was an interesting point to make. So so now they're in the barn again. Lloyd, they're saddling up horses. It's all the cowboys and Rip and everybody in Carter's there too. And Lloyd gets his horse taken away. And so after the fight, now Lloyd is on the shit list. He's low man on the ladder, and Rip's basically punishing him. Rightfully so, but it's all built on a bullshit storyline between Walker, Lloyd, and Laramie. So anything after that is a fucking annoyance to me. It because it's such a weak storyline that it doesn't matter about now the fight, like even the fight, because you know he did break a rule and he is the leader of the bunkhouse, but it doesn't matter because that was all based on crap. So anyways, he's getting demoted basically, and Rip tells him to show Carter how to saddle a horse. And I thought that was actually a pretty good scene between Lloyd and Carter, because in my opinion, when I first when they first introduced Carter, I thought he was going to be a cool addition, and I was curious because in that the opening scenes with him, I thought he was the kid was like he had that thing where I was like, oh, he had that sort of Jimmy, that underdog, want him to succeed, and he's just been sort of stagnant since then. He's done nothing really. They've done basically nothing with his character. So him getting some time to actually see him sort of grow and learn something, it was kind of a nice a tiny little payoff. And he's as Lloyd's teaching him, he's repeating back. Lloyd's telling him to repeat back what he says, and Lloyd says several things, and he just boom, boom, boom. So he's pretty sharp. He's not an idiot. Um, and then and then they all take off and they leave Lloyd behind. All the cowboys head off to work, and Lloyd has to stay back with. They told him to do something. I don't know, mend fence or some shit. So then Jamie calls. We go to Jamie. He calls the warden of the prison that Terrell's in and offers him immunity. Basically, he wants to set up the meeting. Man, I wish I keep saying Terrell, but I wonder if I'm making a mistake. That's all right. It's fine. No big deal. The prisoner. So then we move to back to Jimmy, and he's on the he's at the 4-6 ranch now. 4-6's ranch. And it's literally, that's what it, like they've said it, but now we see what their brand looks like. It's actually 4 times. So the 4-6's. And he wakes up, and it's funny because he gets dropped off, and when he does, he doesn't know where to go. And so he's told to go to the back, and he gets back there and no one's there, I guess. So he just sleeps on the ground. And I don't know. What they're doing with this story arc as well, it's just moving at a freaking snail's pace. So he wakes up because a centipede bites him, and there's an old cowboy sitting there. His name's Ross, and he's played by Barry Corbin. And I've always liked this guy. He's an actor that's been around for a long time, and he has a really distinct and cool voice, and I think he's a really good actor. So it was kind of nice to see him. He's getting up there, and he's starting to show his age for sure. And it was a good scene for him. He talks to him a little bit, and they have a couple of little funny lines together. And then he starts telling him about being a cowboy, and I thought this was a really good scene for him because the way he explains it, about being a cowboy and how it's a thankless job and how it's art and you're going to work your ass off and you're going to put your life on the line and no one's going to be there to thank you. There's no audience. And I thought it was a really cool scene. Good for Jimmy too. You know, he needs to learn. So now we go to Casey is going to work and he pulls up and there's this big ass protest going on. He gets out and they're blocking. So the protest, they're blocking the sidewalk so he can't get in. And so he just pulls up, gets out of his truck, and they're all yelling and there's signs and everything. And then some guy runs up on him and actually like grabs him. And then Casey does what he does, slams the dude down to the ground, holds him down, is pinning him down. And then a woman tries to run up and attack him from behind. Like while Casey's holding the guy down, this woman runs up, and then I can't remember the guy's name. He's a livestock agent that we've seen, multiple times throughout the show. And he runs in, boom, grabs her, slams her ass to the ground. And it was so it was okay. The scene was okay. But then Casey pulls his gun out and holds it up in the air. And that's like a way to get everyone to back off. And I don't know. It was kind of weird, like waving your gun around. I guess that's a way to do it. He didn't shoot it or anything. So, I mean, yeah, but it's just kind of weird. And then they all, they start chucking rocks at him and shit. And it just, I don't know. I wonder what they're doing with this. I mean, we see a little bit, but I don't know. I just thought the scene was a little forced. Let's see, where are we at? Oh, so John, we cut back to the ranch, and it's John and Rip, and they're talking about what's going on with Lloyd. And I thought it was good that John is pointing out to Rip that don't forget who Lloyd is, and don't forget that Lloyd, what he's done for this ranch. And yeah, I mean, they have built Lloyd up as he's the third in command when it comes to the ranch. When it comes to the ranch and the ranch hands and the Cowboys, it's John, it's Rip, and then it's Lloyd. So yeah, and he's been with them for a long time. We've heard that multiple times. So I thought it was good that Rip heard this, but it's just Rip's idea here of like, oh, the only reason he's even still around is because of what he's done for the ranch, strictly because he got into a fight with Walker. Like, that is how bad the rule is. So if you get into a fist fight, then you should be killed, because Lloyd wears the brand. And that is something I mentioned before in one of my previous reviews, that once the Cowboys are on the ranch and they're working and they get accepted, or maybe they're forced to, but they get branded, like literally branded like a cow on their chest. They get the Yellowstone brand on their chest. And once you have that brand, you're locked in. It's basically death is the only thing that can get you out of it. And we've seen Lloyd has killed people. We saw that early on, that Lloyd killed a man, a ranch hand who was working, and he started a fight. But it was more than that. This guy was, they sort of made it out to be, the fighting was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's why they were going to kill this guy. And again, this was very early on. This was like the first few episodes of the show, and Lloyd kills the man for him. He kills him based on what Rip says. Rip says, I think they say something that was like, he needs to take a ride on the train or something like that. That's their code. So it just, so the way Rip phrased that, like he should be gone, like should he be dead or fired? Like, what are you saying? Because I thought you couldn't fire people. You're in. There's no way out, and the only way out is death. So are you going to kill him? Like, this Rip and Lloyd shit, based on how it's from the Walker shit, it's so dumb. So we cut back to the protesters, and while Rip and John are talking about this, John gets a phone call from Casey and says, tells him what's going on. So then John grabs one of the Cowboys. He's actually a livestock agent. He grabs him and takes him back to Casey's work. So John shows up and he wants to talk, or he talks to the sheriff, and he wants to know who's in charge, who's running the ringleader of the protest, who is it? And he points out, the sheriff points out, I'm sorry, that it's Summer Higgins is her name, and she's played by her name is Piper Parabo, and she's got a rap sheet, and this is, this isn't her first rodeo. She's gotten in trouble before. So then he goes over to talk to her, John does. And this was it was one of those scenes where it has to be uh it's like current agenda shit that I just don't like. And so she gives him a hard time because he asks her if a couple of the women who were lined up on the curb, two of the women protesters, they didn't have shirts on. They just had their bras on, and they had threw red paint on themselves to signify blood, like, because they're protesting about the animals and the ranches. And he offers a blanket for them, and then she fucking lectures him about being a toxic male and how, you can't control what she says, what did she say? Oh yeah, she says, talks about his toxic male fantasies, and you're uncomfortable looking at them, but you have your toxic male fantasies about them, and they, like, their bodies weren't made. Nature designed them to feed children, and basically saying you don't want to look at their boobies, but you have male fantasies, toxic male fantasies about boobies, but boobies were never for you in the first place. And it was just so stupid because he offered them like a blanket. That's all he did. He offered them. It was a gesture, a kind gesture at that. And she fucking gave him this just stupid ass little speech. I thought it was stupid. It was a eye rolling moment, man. She gets all preachy like that. And I hate when they bring that type of toxic male bullshit into it. And it's not it gets a little bit more later. So I don't know. The Summer character, we'll see what's up. And then she tells them why they're protesting, and she talks about she says it's, what did she say? It was state-sponsored police force that provides protection for industrial animal farming and the murder of animals. And okay, let's, at least she has a point of view, and that's, I'm okay with that. I don't agree with it, and I thought it was cool that John actually gives her a lesson on farming. And it was John is, like I said before, he's a man of few words, and the way he explained it to her very succinctly was, do you understand that, have you ever farmed, and do you understand what it takes to farm the stuff that you eat? When he talks about like kale or whatever the hell she eats, and how much land is destroyed and animals are displaced because of farming for the shit that you eat. And I thought it was good. I thought it was a nice comeback. Good for you, John. You toxic male. And so he goes back and talks to Casey, and they do bring up an interesting point regarding why the protesters are there. And he says, this doesn't seem random. Why would they be all the way out here? And I'm assuming when they say all the way out here, because where they are in Montana, it's pretty remote. I mean, we see them in a city, but it's not, or a town, I should say. So it obviously it looks to be like someone sent those protesters there, which makes sense. And the sheriff asks, what does he want them to do? And John says, fucking press charges, teach him a lesson. So again, it was good. It was a decent scene. It was so funny because that scene would have been a really good scene without that preachy ass toxic male shit. I mean, that's all, like, just take that out and that scene would have been nice and clean and strong, and it would have made her point a little bit more, but she had to lecture him. Ah, so annoying. Now they're back on the ranch here, and the cowboys are breaking on the Yellowstone ranch. The cowboys are breaking in some horses, and Lloyd sits around watching, because, we don't see it, but obviously Rip told him not to join, so he's just sitting there looking all angry. And then after all of the cowboys have and the ranch heads have done their job, there's like three horses left, and he Rip tells Lloyd, now you can do your thing, and then when you're done, do the rest of your job, do the rest of your work, whatever. And Lloyd's, he finally speaks up to Rip, and he says, like, after all I've done for you guys, I'm low man on totem pole, like, what the fuck. And it just, this conversation again, it's so, it just seems so out of place, because when Lloyd says that, obviously Rip gets pissed off and gets up in his face, and he starts Lloyd starts telling Rip, "You're pissed off at me for something that you should have done a long time ago." What exactly? So is he saying that Rip should have fought and beat up Walker because Walker hooked up with Laramie after Lloyd hooked up with her? It doesn't make any sense. It's such a weak storyline, and they just sort of, it's like this really thin thread that they're trying to make this big sweater out of, and it's like it's a very thin sweater. So, and he also says that the guy should be dead. Walker should be killed. For what? And again, I was actually, when I watched this again the second time, I was wondering, I was like, did I miss something? So maybe there's something that I am just completely drawing a blank on, but I can't recall anything that Walker has done to deserve death. So, and then Rip's response, Rip agrees with him. Rip gets mad and says, well, he gets more mad, and he says, no one wants him dead more than I do, but the boss wants him here, so fucking deal with it. Why does Rip want him dead? So see what I mean? It just this doesn't add up. And I don't know. It's a weak story. Okay. So then we see cut to the bunkhouse. It's the end of the night, and all the ranch hands are watching rodeo, and it's a little scene. And then Lloyd leaves, puts on his coat and his hat, and walks out. And then he swings by where Carter's sleeping in the barn. He's in one of the stalls. He swings in, talks to him for a second. Kind of feel bad for Carter because, again, his character's just forgotten. He really is. There's not much going on with him. And then we see Laramie and Walker. And so, like I said before, Walker isn't sleeping in the bunkhouse anymore, and he sleeps in Laramie's camper with her in her truck, in the back of her truck, I mean. And just happens to be the night that Walker wants to sleep out underneath the stars next to a fire, and Laramie comes out, and of course they're going to start having sex, and it just happens to be the time that Lloyd is out wandering around. So now he sees them having sex and gets all pissed off, gets he's all angry face, and I feel like the projection that we're on is something drastic is going to happen. Lloyd is going to die, or Walker's going to die, or Laramie's going to die. It's got to be one of the three. Either one, like Laramie's going to be either collateral damage and she's going to get killed, or Walker or the other two are going to kill each other. So I don't know. I think it's so stupid, but they're like hammering this storyline along as though it's very important, and it's just not. So let's see. Where are we at? Lost my place here. Oh, so Beth and John, they're talking, and they're at the table, and John is asking Beth about what's going on, and like what's going on with market equities, and what's the latest and greatest on her agenda, basically. And she says that he asks her, why is it so important that she takes this job, and how does this help the ranch? And she says, I'm going to take this job and I'm going to run this company into the fucking ground. How? Like, how? This is a huge corporation. The show is saying that it is. I'm not saying that it is. The show is making this corporation seem like it's very large, very powerful, and she's going to run it. Her by herself is going to run into the ground. That's like one person getting hired on at like Boeing, or or like Merrill Lynch, and one person just drives it into the ground. just like that. They're just so good. So I just it doesn't make it doesn't make sense, and I feel like it's just they're putting her in a position to be the like it would make sense if she's sort of like the inside. She wants the inside track on Market, and she wants to know like what's going on with him, and she can feed them informations, but feed John and the ranch the information, but run into the ground. Okay, interesting. Um, and also the thing about that's bothering me with Beth and this whole being this bulldog in the boardroom, we've seen her one time in that position where she's actually speaking like a person who is, you know, who is very versed in how companies are ran, and like there are hints of like the way she talks about certain things. She doesn't seem like she's an idiot at all, but it's just they have positioned her to be this like badass corporate woman, and we never see her doing it. We never see her doing that job. And when we do, it's like little spritz and spurts and like tiny little conversations, but it's always it's a very small portion of her conversations. Everything else is just insults and vulgar shit. Like, so I don't understand. I wish they would have done a better job of presenting her with that with that sort of storyline, with her being strong in the corporate world versus them just telling us that she is, because everyone talks about how awesome she is, in the boardroom, but it's like we just really haven't seen it much. So, all right, so she takes off to start her day, and she leaves John sitting there, and then John he leaves, and he goes to bail out Summer, the woman who is the ringleader for the protest, and he wants to she gets out and they talk for a second on the street, and he offers her a ride to his ranch, and he wants to show her his ranch. And again, more shit that has to be said. So John has given her no reason, like she doesn't even know him. This is the first conversation they had was just the day before, and now he's bailing her out of jail. And he offers her a chance to get to know him, and he wants to not to even get to know him, to understand him, and he wants to understand her. And he says, I respect your point of view. I don't agree with it, but I respect that you're willing to go to the mat for it. And it's like, okay, that's cool. And then she has to point out that every fiber in her being is telling her not to get into the truck with a charming white male. And it's just, oh, I'm sorry, a charming white male in his 50s. And it was just this, she could have just said stranger. She could have just said a strange man, a man I don't know, or my enemy. But it's just, I had to throw that in there. And then she ends up going with him. So it's like that line was thrown in there just for her to, like, 2 seconds later, okay, I'm going to get in the truck with you. It's just stupid. Let's see where we at. Okay, so then we cut to excuse me, Jamie's meeting with the prisoner and Terrell and his lawyer, and this was a scene that I was really excited to see, because so far I just feel like a lot of the threads are just twisting in the wind and nothing's really happening. They're just sort of kind of adding layers, little tiny layers to everything, but nothing's really getting done with all of the story arcs. And so we see Jamie in a room with the prisoner and his lawyer, and then he shows him a picture of Garrett. He slides it across the table, and he asks him, "Have you ever seen this guy? Is this?" Or I'm sorry, no. He says, "Is this the guy that had anything to do or organized the hit on the Dutton family?" And then boom, it cuts. So we don't even get an answer. So it was just, it's such a cheap little way of like, oh, it's such a cliffhanger. Just fucking show us, like, what? It's taken forever. We've seen this guy's photo over and over, and we finally get a chance to listen to this man speak, this guy Terrell, and nothing happens. He doesn't really say much. He literally he only says a few lines, and it's basically just asking him if the offer of immunity is real or not that Jamie is offering him. So lame. And then we see John and Summer driving in the truck, and I think their conversation was pretty good. You know, he is explaining to her, he's trying to explain to her where he's coming from, and she kind of makes these comments about, you know, how they're in the middle of nowhere and how he doesn't know how the rest of the world lives and everything. And he made a good point of like, you know, I only know the world that I live in, and you know, my world isn't easy. And I thought it was a good conversation. But where is this going? Because John has been talking about being lonely, and Beth made a comment about finding him, you know, some loving. And you know, they've been pretty much, whenever something is said, it's going to lead to something. So it's been sort of brought up a couple of times that he's lonely or whatever, or he needs someone. Is this going to be his love interest? I don't know. Well, so then then we cut to Beth, and she's heading over to old Schwarzenmeyer. And on her way there, she's on the phone. She's talking to someone about a wedding that she's going to have. They're going to host at the Yellowstone Ranch. So she's starting to rent out the ranch for things to make money and to get the brand going. And I talked about this in my my review, because I'm watching Hawkeye and I'm reviewing that. And she walks into Schwarzenmeyer, and it's that same old scene. And it's like just happens to happen again, in both shows at the same time, around the same time. She storms in, and it's the whole thing where it's like she's power walking through the office, and you know the receptionist is like, "Excuse me, you can't go in there." And then she's getting, you know, everyone's following her. "Ma'am, stop, ma'am, you can't go in there." And it's like, man, they just really got to drive that scene home. I've seen it so many times. It's just tired shit, repeated and lazy. And so she goes in, talks to Bob, and she fires him. She has a couple of smart ass lines, and it was Bob's reaction was pretty lackluster. He doesn't really react at all. And then the big thing that was, she says to him, "I drove 7 hours just to tell you that." Cool, cool. You're so badass. Like it had no payoff, because she has said how much she's going to screw this guy's life up, and then she says this one thing, and then it's like nothing happens. You know, it was just sort of this. It was like this scene to make sure Beth had this power moment, and it fell flat on his fucking face. Um, so then we see. So Jamie, we cut to Jamie coming home, and Garrett's there, and so Jamie, you can tell he's pissed. You know, he's got you know, the beady eyes. He's angry look, and Garrett comes around the porch and meets him, and the only thing that happens between them two, in regards to what we don't know was said in the interview with the prisoner, was Garrett tells Jamie secrets can't stay hidden forever, and then he says, "What secret?" Something, and Jamie's like, "You first." And it was like that, and then there's like nothing happened after that, like with in regards to this whole this conversation about the prisoner, Terrell. And so then Garrett, when he says "you first," Garrett turns around, and it's Jamie's girlfriend. I don't know if they were engaged, but it was his girlfriend from season one. And I haven't gone back and rewatched any of these seasons, but I do recall her. But it was weird, because when I saw her, I didn't recognize her, and then I kind of remembered, because she speaks about, you know, "You did everything you said you were going to do, Jamie. You left your father. You got out from behind him. And, you know, you did this all on your own." And she's holding a baby, and she says, "Come meet your son." And it was one of those things where it came out of left field. Um, and then that was it. That was kind of the end of the scene. So once again, no payoff. So then, and oh, the other thing too is I don't remember her being pregnant. Maybe she said that, but I don't recall. It was, you know, season one was like 5 years ago now, so I don't remember. Um, and then the next scene is Jimmy wakes up, and he's in the barn now, sleeping on a bench, and of the sixes. And there's a couple of old cowboys, Russ and another older cowboy, are talking, and then He hooks up with the younger guys, the actual worker guys, the cowboys. They show up and put him on a horse, and he takes off, and that's pretty much it. Um, so both of these episodes, to me, the problem with them is everything is moving at a glacier pace. With when the beginning of the season and everything that it set up, I wanted uh, a mystery regarding this who did it. You know, this whole thing of I thought, and I want the season to take its time in terms of we don't want to. I don't want to find out who did it right away because you know, kind of like well, it's kind of a letdown. But they're not moving the story along. They're not making it interesting and mysterious. You know, we've seen the same photo of the guy in his mugshot, and just it gets passed around, and it's been passed around for like 4 episodes now, and nothing's really happening. And then we finally sit down and we hear this guy and see what he has to say, and they don't even show us with a conversation. They cut to build suspense, and it's just it's like fake. It's like a fake out to build suspense and make the show more interesting, and it's not working. And you know the whole story with Carter and what's going on with him and all of that stupid shit that scene that happened between Beth and him over a shirt, and now all of a sudden Beth has it in for him and doesn't want anything to do with him, and they haven't shared a scene together since then, and it's just been Carter in the barn. Every time we see him, he's in the barn, and when Rip talks to him, Rip's lecturing him and telling him how you know you got to seize your opportunities, you can't do this, you got to do that, and it's like, okay, Obi-Wan, like what? Great, but that's it. It's repeating the same shit over and over, and it's that thread again is based on a fucking very thin story. That what happened between Beth and Carter doesn't it doesn't warrant this sort of reaction to me. It seems so overhyped to force this storyline between Rip and Carter, and it's not even good. Like what they're doing with Rip and Carter right now. I wanted to see Rip, you know, be Rip. You know, he's an asshole. He cusses all the time, and he's very harsh, and he's you know he doesn't give a shit. But he does have a heart, and he does have a moral compass for the most part. And him mentoring Carter, I thought would have been really cool, but it hasn't really been that. It started off on shaky ground already, but then it's just him having these little scenes with him, and he's not teaching him anything, he's not showing him anything, nothing. That's why the Lloyd and Carter scene I thought was so good, because we actually see Carter learning to be a useful person on the ranch and learning to, I don't know if he's going to be a cowboy, but at least he's learning something. We start to see him grow. So, and that took episodes. I mean, that's been what, 3 or 4 episodes, and he's just now learning this. I don't know. It just seems like such a waste for his storyline. And the market equities, the company and Jackie. What's the plan? All we know right now is that they want to help Rainwater build this giant casino resort and make billions. They want to build Las Vegas, Montana. And nothing's happening with that. Nothing. Like I thought we would be somewhere along, and Rainwater is just sort of, he's off to the side. And when Jackie and Rainwater met, it seemed as though that was going to be a really interesting story. Are they going to align? Are they going to be enemies? What's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing's happening. Nothing. Um, so then on the plot with who made the hit on the Dutton family, that whole story has just been beaten to death. There's nothing happening with it. It just keep moving it across like subtly and not in a way that's any way suspenseful. Um, and then the Lloyd Walker conflict, that again, another thread that was built on shaky ground. And I thought by now there would be some sort of payoff. They got into a fight, okay, but nothing's happening. We're just watching Lloyd walk around, be pissed off, and that's it. So, and I think all of these stories could be heading in a direction that will have payoff, but right now we're in that sort of that middle of the season slump, and I know a lot of shows have that. They, season I'm sorry, episode one, or of any season of any show, typically is like the strong ones. Got to get you, put those hooks in you, get you excited and wanting to know more. And then episode two usually picks up and kind of carries the ball down the field a little bit further. And then again, I understand once we get into the middle of most seasons, it usually gets a little bit slower. But geez, man, episode 4 and 5, it's just nothing. Jimmy, the whole Jimmy story, there's nothing happening with him. He's just now he's at the sixes doing nothing. We finally see him on a horse and actually, sorry, my nose is like itchy right now. We see him actually interact with people on the ranch, but he's not doing anything. And the sixes were revered. The way they were spoke of when Mia and Rip and the other cowboys were talking about the sixes and Travis, they were they were like, man, the sixes are badasses. They're legends. Show us. I mean, we're at episode 5. I think there's only eight episodes. So yeah, I think it was 8. So there's only 3 episodes left. Are we ever going to see the sixes be this big badass ranch? Are we ever going to see is the prisoner, this tarot guy? Are we ever going to learn anything about this guy with Garrett? They're just dangling the carrot in front of us, and they're not doing anything to fill in the plot leading up to it. It's just a slog, man. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to continue watching. It's doing what I thought it was going to do. So most of it's predictable. And there's some things of the show that I like. I do like parts of the show. I'm not saying that I hate it, but just right now, from starting off so strong the way it did in the opening scenes of episode 1 of this season to where we are now, not a lot's happened. It really hasn't. If you sit and think about it and you start writing it out, it's like, well, we're kind of just middling around saying the same shit. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up. It's late. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you heard, click the subscribe button. Share it with your friends if you think it's worth their time. If you're liking the show, leave me a comment. Tell me why. Send me an email. Let me know what you're thinking on the show. I'd love to know your thoughts. Other than that, you have a great night. I'll talk to you later. Bye.